Entering the atmosphere in T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Doom Crossing. Doom, what's going on, man? How are you? I understand that you just saw a certain movie, and that maybe you didn't think of as highly of it as I did. What's going on in your world, Doom?
Yeah, so I'm enjoying my one day off I have this week, and I saw Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, a film that I've been very much looking forward to seeing, and, you know, I still enjoyed the film. I want to say first, I enjoyed the film, has some insane action sequences, and I think Anya Taylor-Joy does a terrific job playing a young Furiosa, but I don't think I quite share the same enjoyment as the general consensus, where everyone's like, yo, movie of the year right here, movie of the year, it's incredible, it's just as good as Fury Road, and I freaking love Fury Road. That is an easy 10 out of 10 film for me. I think this is more of a 7 out of 10, but a 7 out of 10 for me personally is still a really good film. I still highly recommend everyone go out to see it. You're going to have a good time regardless. I just thought the pacing just didn't quite match the same for me as the first film, and there were definitely a lot of other elements that were missing. But again, still a really fun movie, and I mean, my opinion's in the minority, so like, you're probably still going to enjoy the hell out of it regardless. In other news, though, as you can see, the Metroid display is slowly coming into fruition. It's still a long way to go, but yeah, since the last episode, I was able to get a lot of work done on that thing, and it's nice to finally have my Metroid collection up and running again since the move.
Nature is healing.
Yes, nature is healing. Yeah, I love it. But the big news on my mind, and you know, you said the magic word already, it's Doom, baby. Doom the Dark Ages, supposedly being revealed.
I saw something about that. Actually, but hold on, but before we get there, I had a key element, because I had a segue, or not a segue, a plug rather, in mind, because I was going to say, you didn't like Furiosa? Well, tune in to the next episode of the Spateri's Review, because guess what? It's about Furiosa. And maybe a spoiler, but I thought it was awesome. I dare say I almost enjoyed it more than Fury Road, actually. I dare say. I'd have to sit on that for a little while, but it was really, really good. But yeah, we'll have some full thoughts on the next episode of the Spateri's Reviews coming in the next couple of days. So if you're looking for a little bit of Spateri content that's not in the world of video games, go and check that out. It's wherever you get your podcast. That'd be really cool if you were able to come and listen to my wife's and I's thoughts about Furiosa. But yeah, I saw that. I saw that Doom announcement there, and they had the picture of Doom guy in the Cloud Strafe pose, and like with Midgar Helgar or whatever the hell it's going to be called in the background. That's pretty cool, actually. Like like an action adventure Doom game. I'd be pretty down for that.
So that piece of art is actually a specific fan art that I think one of the artists at id Software did during the release of the FF7 remake. They did a bunch of these when like new games were coming out. They even did a Metroid Dread one with like the Doomslayer doing like the Samus pose with the cover art. There's there's a bunch of those to like celebrate various game releases that came out in like a year or two since it was out. So I absolutely love those. I think it's like really cool seeing, game developers celebrating other games, and, Metroid especially, obviously. But yeah, so we kind of already knew that there was a new Doom game in the works because of the FTC leaks during the Microsoft antitrust lawsuit that was going on with Activision. It was entitled Doom Year Zero on the document. It was supposedly supposed to come out either last year or 2022, I can't remember. But now, according to these new rumors, it's supposedly been renamed The Dark Ages, and it's being shown off on June 9th. And yeah, I hope it's true, because, man, I am ready for some Doom. And in fact, to quote my man Reggie Fils-Aimé, my body is ready.
I thought of you the other day, actually, Doom, because, and I talked about this last week on the show, but like I said last week, I fired up my Xbox for like the first time in God knows how long, like at least a year, if not more. Like I think the last game I played on my Xbox was Tunic, and that was early 2022. So it's been a while. And so I was firing it up, and I was like, I was just going over because you need the rare replay disc in order to play Perfect Dark, which I've kind of been playing a little bit here and there. I just finished GoldenEye on the N64, which is an all-timer, but like Perfect Dark is just so much better in every conceivable way. Like it really, it's so awesome. It's my favorite shooter that's ever been made. But so as I was grabbing rare replay, you can't see it here, but I've got my Xbox games right there, and I'm throwing it in, and I see Doom Eternal on the shelf. And the last time I fired up my Xbox was because I was like, you know what? I'm finally gonna do it. I'm finally, I can't tell Doom that I've owned this game for like 3.5 years now, and I'm like, I haven't played it yet. And I can't tell him any longer that I haven't played it. So I was firing it up. I put in my Xbox, and then my Xbox, like a year or whatever ago, needed to update. The game itself needed to install, and I was like, ugh, my controller was dead. So I left it overnight, and then the next day, I'd lost the will to play. It was something else, and I was just like, okay, maybe I'll pick it up on the weekend. And that never came. And so I thought of you as I was reaching for rare replay and seeing Doom Eternal, and I felt a little bit bad skipping past it, but I don't know, maybe this new Doom game is kind of the sauce we need in order to finally get this game going. Because I did play Doom 64 earlier this year, and it was awesome. I played the original Doom earlier within the last year or so. It's great. I mean, I loved the 2016 Doom. Like, there hasn't been a bad Doom game that I've played. I'm sure I'd love Eternal. I don't know what I haven't played it. I don't know what it is.
I know my time will come eventually. I'm a patient man. I'm a Metroid fan. I'm used to being patient, You
have to be if you're a fan of this series, that's for sure. Well, I'll tell you what, we're kicking it old school this week, which is a little bit serendipitous because earlier today on the Zelda cast, any sharp-eyed fans that watch us on YouTube are going to be able to see that I am dressed exactly the same as I am on the Zelda cast because, well, we're doing these shows on the same day, and on the ZeldaCast, we did a definitive ranking of the original Legend of Zelda. So the almost 40-year-old game got its time in the sun, and I had a lot of really, really spectacular things to say about it, and obviously referenced NEStroid quite a bit during that show as a contemporary and a comparable, which is appropriate because today we're talking about NEStroid, and it was a little bit of a last minute decision here, but we're bringing back mapping Metroid because, as far as I can tell, we have not done any mapping Metroids on NEStroid. We've done Metroid Prime, Super Metroid, Fusion, Samus Returns, Hunters, Echoes, Corruption, pretty much every game in the series except for NEStroid. So we thought that it would be a good time and a good show in order to dust off the original Metroid, the one that got it all started, and talk about what I think, anyways, and I guess we'll get into this as we kind of go, but I think that Ridley's Lair is the best area in the game, and we're here today to talk about that particular area because I think that has a lot of really, really great stuff. Now, not all of it is perfect, of course, and there's certainly some limitations to this game, particularly because it's this game in and of itself is almost 40 years old, but I think that this is still a pretty cool area and has a lot of good stuff going for it. So it's been a while since we've talked about NEStroid, but I'm ready, man. I'm happy to jump back in and kick it old school.
That terrified me when you said this game is almost 40, just to let you know. I remember when we were just celebrating the 35th anniversary with Dread, and it feels like that was just here, but no, in 2 more years this game is going to be 40. That is a number,
man. In 2 more years I'm almost going to be 40. Like I'm 36 right now. Like I'm going to be 38 when this game turns 40, which, I mean, I've had Metroid my whole life. It definitely makes you stop and be like, oh my god, this time never slows down, does it? But anyways, that's a story for another day. Let's just get right into Ridley's Lair, and actually where I kind of wanted to start was, oddly enough, with Zero Mission, because I kind of think that, and we did a couple Zero Mission shows for the 20th anniversary not that long ago, and we were talking about a bunch of different areas and what have you, and I don't know. There was something about the Ridley level in Zero Mission that just lost a little something to me. And I don't know what it is about this original NEStroid that just makes this Ridley level like specifically stick out for me as just being like so memorable. But there's just something about it. It's so like it's really intense. You know what it is? It's kind of like the phase-on mines of the original NEStroid, where it's just like this gauntlet, and it's like it's a big skill check where you have to go in and you have to really be prepared, and you have limited space. It's also very Metroid 2 in that kind of sense, where it's very claustrophobic. I think it's just a really spectacular area, and there, yeah, like I said, there was something about Zero Mission that didn't quite nail that same kind of vibe to me. And we'll talk about a few different things in this area, but it was the first area that I had in mind when I wanted to talk about NEStroid here. But I guess before we even really, just get right into the specifics about what I love about the Ridley area, Doom, let me ask you a question. If you were to pick your favorite area from NEStroid, would you have one? First of all, number two, would it be Ridley? And number three, let's just revisit Zero Mission for a sec, because I know that you were a fan of that area, or I think you were anyways. How do you think that area, I guess, kind of compares to the original, just in terms, whatever that means to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's definitely a lot to answer here. So I guess I'll just go kind of with the comparison to Zero Mission first, because I do. There really isn't a single area in Zero Mission that I don't like, and as you were just alluding to here, it is its interpretation of Ridley. While there are obvious, similarities, obviously, the music is based on the original arrangement by Hip Tanaka in '86. There's architectural pieces, the map layout is roughly the same. But that being said, tonally, and even to a gameplay extent as well, I feel like they are two very different beasts. And I don't necessarily have a preference towards one or the other, but I do respect NEStroid's more gauntlet-like approach, because I definitely agree with you. This feels like the gauntlet of the game.
Yeah.
And Zero Mission, as much as I love that game, never really, outside of maybe Torian, never really feels like it has a gauntlet type of level in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something I definitely really appreciate about this game, especially because, it is trying to create this absolutely oppressive environment where you never feel safe. You always feel like you're on the defensive. You never quite feel like, you're the invincible warrior that you typically feel like at the end of a Metroid game. And, that's kind of the thing, I've always poo-pooed on NEStroid a lot, but I've always wanted, it's kind of like Hollow Knight, actually, where I've always wanted to give this game another chance, because I always felt like I was missing something, and someday I'll do that. I actually really wanted to do it for this episode, but just with my work schedule, I didn't have the time, unfortunately. But this is a game that I want to retry for myself. No cheat codes, no nothing, just me versus the game. And because like when I was watching YouTube videos of this, and just the atmosphere, I was really engaged with it. Just watching, because. Typically in, Metroid games, after Metroid 2 and the 2D games, you have backgrounds now. NEStroid doesn't, and on one hand, you could see it as a limitation, but it also creates, it does create this feeling like you are deep within the planet. There is no light shining above. It is dark, it is cramped, and there are, all these critters scurrying about that you know nothing about, that do not like you trespassing on their territory. And Ridley's Lair feels like the penultimate test in that. Which is funny, because the actual boss fight itself is pretty easy. Yeah. It's everything else in the area you have to worry about. But yeah, I really like the oppressive atmosphere that's especially in this area. And then while I love Zero Mission's Ridley as well, it is very much a different beast. I can't remember if there's anything else you asked in those three questions, but yeah, that's kind of my basic takeaway.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Just like, well, here, how about this? This is my favorite area in NEStroid. I was wondering if you even had a favorite area in NEStroid, or if it was just kind of like almost like in Metroid 2, where it's like the whole game is kind of one thing together. And before you answer that, I'll kind of build off your comment too. Like, I'm kind of with you. I in years past was like, NEStroid has been completely replaced to me by Zero Mission. There is no need to play NEStroid now that Zero Mission exists. And I think a lot of players would probably agree with that sentiment. But after we started the show and I started writing a little bit of a guide for this game over on OmegaMetroid.com, I don't know, there was something about it that just I really kind of started to appreciate like the different, like the design of the level, all the different enemies that you can see in the level. So for a bunch of different reasons, it just became my favorite area in the game. The one area that I really think of when I'm thinking of like a really quality level in Metroid. And I was wondering if you even had like a level kind of like that in this game, or if you're, I don't know, maybe like I was kind of pre-writing a guide where you're still kind of looking for that breakthrough, like almost like that aha moment, you know?
I wouldn't say my favorite area has to necessarily do with me not finding the aha moment. It's more so just because it's been so long since I did originally beat NEStroid. I think because I've only done one single playthrough of the game the entire time, and like technically I don't even count it as a real playthrough because I use cheat codes, you know. So like I don't count. I want to do a legit playthrough of that game someday, and that was back on the Wii Virtual Console. So we're talking ancient days for me.
Hey.
But yeah, in terms of what I said, I could definitely see Ridley being my favorite area. Crate is also a really awesome area as well. It would probably be either of those two areas if I had to pick one.
Well, let's get into it here, and we have our certain format that we use for mapping Metroid, and we'll kind of stick to that here and just kind of go through. We'll talk about the layout, the rooms, the enemies, bosses, etc., etc., etc. And let's go to that first thing that I mentioned, which is the layout of this area. And it always kind of takes me by surprise. This is a really tiny area, comparatively speaking, to Norfair is huge, Brinstar is huge, even Torian is pretty big, but I feel like this area kind of packs a lot into a little space, particularly with the way that you have to get to Ridley, and particularly like through all of the long, really narrow, really tight hallways. So it feels small, and it is small, but it kind of uses that to its advantage. And I think that's one of the best strengths of this area, actually, is because like when you go through, when you're on the way to Ridley, and even when at the very bottom of the area, there's like a single missile expansion hidden, and it's like, if you're not going for 100%, you'd never get it. But if you are, it's like, oh god, I gotta go down there. And so you go and do that. And the thing about this area is like the hallways are narrow, like really narrow, in that you can't really jump a whole lot to get out of the way of like all the enemy fire that's coming at you. So you just kind of have to be like pretty good, like pretty ready to go. Again, it's very similar in my mind to how like when you get into phase on mines and you go through the initial gauntlet, as you adequately called it. There's not really anywhere else for you to go. There's like maybe a few things you can hide behind, but like you got to press forward, and there's like a gajillion enemies in your way. So that's the thing that sticks out to me the most about this layout, in terms of Ridley's Lair. A couple other things too, which I want to touch on, but that's my biggest takeaway, is just how enclosed you really are.
Yeah, it's an enclosed space, but it's you and the rest of the enemies that are enclosed, and because you have to contend with, you're navigating these rooms at a much slower rate than you would be in like even Norfair, which is also like I think kind of a skill checkish area. It feels like Brinstar. I think Norfair is like Brinstar hard mode. I think would be a good way to describe that area.
Yeah, that's
whereas Ridley just kind of feels like its own beast entirely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And one other thing, I guess, that I always kind of, again, this feels like it happens more than it actually does. Like, because I think it only happens one time in Ridley's Lair, but like, there's like burned in my brain because I must have fallen like 100 times when I was doing this. But that one tank, I believe it's either a missile tank or an energy tank. But there's
an energy tank.
It's an energy. Okay. And there's the invisible tiles in front of it, and it's just like, I don't know, it just gives me like total Meridia vibes playing it, and it's just like, like when you continuously fall and fall and fall and fall. So that's one thing that I always kind of noticed, I guess, about this area as well, is that it had that deceptive, like, I don't know, element of illusion to it, which I thought was kind of cool because like you're in the deepest parts of like the actual planet itself. And one other thing I guess we should talk about as well is I just think the overall aesthetic is like really cool. It's and this is like the most NES thing ever because we're talking about an NES game, but there really is something striking about when you go down there and it's just like this big purple, like the purple bubbles, and it's like a limitation of the NES, but I think it's also a strength, particularly in Metroid, is like each room is like you start off and everything's blue and black. It's like when you get to the gold room, you're like, whoa, this is different. When you get to Kraid's area, it's very distinct. You're in the green, and they use colors really appropriately there. So there's lots of purple, lots of deep red in this area. It kind of gives it like this scary, ominous kind of vibe to it. I don't know, like a witchcraft kind of vibe to it that has always really resonated with me. I think it just looks cool. And you can't really quantify that, but I think it adds to this area for me too. Is like there's something about the color scheme that just makes you feel like danger is around the corner, and I think it works really well for the area.
Yeah, Ridley was looking at himself and he's like, you know what? I know exactly what I'm doing with the place.
Yeah.
But I agree with you though. I like how each individual area has like its almost own distinct color. Like Brinstar, it's, those dark blues. Kraid, you kind of have these grays, greens, and yellows. Norfair, it's very orange and red.
Mm-hmm.
Ridley, you have these purples and kind of, almost magentas. And then you go to Torian and it's just like these steel colors.
And yeah, like, and again, like I think it's a limitation of the NES because like they're basically the same thing, but they're just different color schemes. But it really works. Like it really helps kind of differentiate and separate those areas from each other, and it looks really cool. So it's always like quite stuck out to me. And the other thing too is like in true Ridley's Lair form is like this one has like the gross acid, like it looks like awful lava, and it's like it looks fantastic. I really like it, and I really think that it like works quite well actually. Let's talk about a few of the different rooms in particular in this area which stick out for me, and probably honestly speaking the biggest one that sticks out for me is the one that I already mentioned, that one really narrow hallway, like the metallic looking hallway where you have to make that really tough jump, and you have to get that energy tank, and there's 4 tiles beforehand that if you miss the jump you're completely hooped. And that room below it that has been burned into my brain because I missed that jump many times. But other than that, like I think like again like my favorite room, and it's hard to call it a room because it's like such a big hallway, but like particularly that opening hallway, like that's very narrow where you go in, everything's purple, and then you kind of get to the steel portion where there's the missile sitting there for you. I just like really like the layout of that, like the mesh kind of thing, or I don't know what it's supposed to be at the top, but it just looks really sweet to me. That's the room that I always think of. I mean, obviously Ridley's room, which we'll talk about in a bit, but that hallway and just like the gauntlet of it, I've always thought just like really exceptional.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's 3 rooms in this area that sticks out to me. You already said one of them, or as I like to call the leap of faith room. That's all it is, Miles. It's a leap of faith. And which makes sense. They brought that one back in a Zero Mission too, which I mean, it's so iconic. I absolutely, and that's kind of going off on a tangent for a little bit, and I'll segue this into my second favorite room. I love how trolly Ridley's area feels like this game, like you almost you can almost feel like the devs just like kind of giving you the side eye and giving you like a little wink every time they pull something on you, and I honestly I love when games do that. I love when games aren't afraid to like pull their punches in that kind of way, and it's like, okay, I see what you did there, I get you. And then that leads me to my next favorite room, which is the one, weirdly enough, another room that involves an energy tank. It's right after you defeat Ridley. You go through a 10 missile door, not a 5. I don't know if those have ever reappeared in another game. And then you're faced with... Yeah, agreed. But and then you go through the room, and it's nothing but magma and enemies, or so you think, until you walk onto the floor and realize that it's a scam. It's fake. It is a totally safe floor to traverse, and you actually get a free energy tank for taking another leap of faith, I guess.
You're totally. You know what? I totally forgot about that room. That is a troll, isn't it? And what is it? It's a purple door. It takes. Yeah, those should not come back. That's it. I had another. There's another room actually that I wanted to shout out. That is again like a total troll room, and it's actually right before the leap of faith. It's the hallway before, and it's a green hallway, oddly enough. And like there's like a gajillion enemies, and you gotta slowly make your way through them, and you get to the end. And I suppose. Well, actually, no, I don't think so. I was gonna say, like, when you get there, there is a beam that goes almost to the very top of the room, and you can't get through it. Like you no matter what. I was gonna say if you have an ice beam, you could maybe freeze someone, but I don't even think you can unless maybe you can jump up and morph in the air or something like that. But whatever. It's a tough room, and like most people are gonna get to the end, and it's just like. What do I do? I'm stuck. I can't get through. And there's like this random bombable block that nobody would ever see. And it's way back, right before there's like a few tiles of lava. And then like I said, a big stretch of room with a bunch of enemies jumping at you, and they're tough enemies. And you bomb it and you just roll right past everybody and then get to the leap of faith tank room. And it's like, that is so cruel. That is so unbelievably like trollish. Like, but I kind of love it. I kind of like it a lot, actually. And not only that, but yeah, that leads right into the leap of faith. So if you got past the one troll room, then you're right into the other one. So this area kind of messes with you a little bit, which I appreciate. Any other rooms, I guess, stick out to you? Those are the big ones for me. But any other rooms in this area kind of stick out to you, Doom?
Yeah, there's one other room I want to talk about, and it's not really one of the trolley rooms that we've talked about so far. It's more just kind of because I played Zero Mission well before I played NEStroid, and so yeah, I kind of had like a reversal, going through the game for the first time. And one of my favorite rooms in Zero Mission is that catwalk room at the very bottom of the map that you use to charge your speed booster for some of the more infamous puzzles in that game. And obviously, NEStroid doesn't have a speed booster, but it was really cool, playing through that game and seeing, what that room originally was in that game, and how, it was still like it was still bombable blocks or shootable blocks that you could actually access in the wall and use them to like walk over some of the enemies, similar to the bomb shortcut you were just talking about, actually. And so seeing where those grates originated, and it was like, oh, that wasn't just an original creation, that actually was influenced by the original game. I always thought that was really cool, seeing where those roots came from.
Yeah, that is pretty cool, and which actually kind of leads us into our next topic is, we like to typically talk about the lore of an area. Now this area doesn't have what you would call traditional lore, but I think that there's like enough itself that we can talk about, and specifically, like, I guess the way that this area is different than the future versions of Ridley's Lair that would come. And obviously, like, I think those future versions of Ridley's Lair, like, first of all, Ridley's Lair is now just its own section in Norfair. And I guess, like, to be fair, you could maybe just infer, like, that this is just a name for it and it's still a part of Norfair, whatever. But they did kind of transform it from what it is in NEStroid into a more fiery type of area. Because, like, there's... Say what you will about this area, there's certainly some magma and acid and stuff around, but it's not, like, I don't think that you look at this particular version of NEStroid and think, like, okay, this is the fire area. Norfair, I think you do, but not necessarily Ridley's Lair, and I actually kind of think that it works a little bit better for it as well. And I guess, to be fair, like, the Super Metroid, like, the very lower part of Ridley's Lair isn't, like, overly fiery, but it still fiery enough, like, where I would say it's, like, a quote-unquote fire level. But this one isn't necessarily. It's kind of got its own unique vibe to it, which I think is kind of cool. And it's, I don't know, I guess it's funny that they decided to change that.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely makes it stand out a bit more. I've always considered Kraid and Norfair, their own separate unique areas. Although Zero Mission does as well, and that's the game I started off with, so kind of translates there as well. But yeah, aesthetically as well. Like yeah, you still have. I kind of like. I love when games, between levels, you see kind of the transition. You can see the transition in happening between one level theme and the other. And while you don't get as succinct of that in NEStroid, you can still see, some of those rock formations,
Yeah.
but instead of green bubbles, you get the purple bubbles, and you can slowly see that transitioning into, what could be interpreted as, architecture, something that isn't naturally formed in the environment. And, it starts turning into, an actual base of operations. And that's something I've always thought was really cool.
One thing that I kind of, and maybe we should have talked about this in like room layout and whatever, but like one thing that I kind of like about this area too is it's kind of got like the classic like metallic areas which kind of make it seem more like a fortress. Like in Super Metroid, I think that area is spectacular, of course, but it feels almost more of like a temple rather than like an actual base of operations. And again, like we're talking an NES game, so like 40 years ago pretty much, but like I think it's just those little things like just the color change that kind of lend a little bit of I don't know, not credibility, but it makes you be like, okay, this is someone's actual lair. It's where like this evil space dragon, does his work. It like does his whatever evil space dragons do for work. So I've always kind of liked that about it. I was looking for a little bit of data in the official manual because a lot of story and a lot of everything is done in the official manual, and there's nothing really about Ridley's area in particular. It's basically just the general story of the game, so that was too bad. But yeah, not a lot of lore necessarily to speak of, but it's interesting how that transition changed from this game to Super Metroid, and then even in like Zero Mission, I feel like it's kind of like a mix of the two. So I thought that was kind of cool. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's keep on plugging away here. Next thing we'll talk about. Well, you know what? Next thing we'll talk about is all the enemies that are in this area, because there are a lot, and I think that this area is really cool actually for a bunch of different reasons, because there's a ton of enemies that are like you can only find in Ridley's lair, and I'll try and pull. I can picture them in my head, but if you ask me the name, I have no idea. But I'll try and pull up a few as I'm talking here. But I mean, one of the coolest things about about Ridley's lair is like you get like the souped up versions of all the different creatures and enemies that you find in the planet. They're all super tough. They're all super imposing. Take a lot of hits. You really have to have like a lot of missiles if you're going to be able to kind of survive in this area. And again, like I just think that like they look so menacing. Like there's those, I don't know if you know what they're called too, but there's those like one enemies. They almost look like they're Meta Knight's helmet or whatever. They fly up and down or whatever. Like those things, I think are like super imposing and super scary, and just I think that they just look really spectacular. I think. Oh no, I was gonna say they might be called Disgigas, but those are like the little crawly.
Those are the purple side hoppers. Those are the purple side hoppers.
Yeah. Those are creepy too. Those are creepy and dangerous little guys. I think they're called multiviolas. Actually, is what they're called. No, that's not it. I will look at what this enemy's called here. But my point is I really appreciate that there's like, and it's kind of the same thing. I was talking about Death Mountain from Legend of Zelda, the original game, earlier today, which is the last dungeon of that game. And there's a bunch of like really cool enemies that they save for that area too. That they're not anywhere else in the game. Like Patras are in there, and I think that's really cool. But yeah, this area has like a couple of those, and I think it's better off for it. It really kind of adds to the element of danger that you face.
Yeah, I love the little Meta Knight looking enemies. There's a ton of like the 2D enemies that I just haven't memorized the names of, mostly from Metroid 2, but a few from like Super and NES as well. Yeah, I always love those things.
They're called Holtz. Holtz, yeah. Actually, so the official artwork on the game, they actually look kind of cute, but the sprites look menacing as hell. They look like evil and ready to get right up in your business.
Yeah, it reminds me specifically of those evil masks from Super Mario Brothers 2, the US version, not the Japanese version, Lost Levels. You know what I'm talking about, Andy? You know, when you get the key in Super Mario Brothers 2, and like those evil smiling masks start chasing you until you unlock the door?
Oh, yeah. It's been a long time, actually, but yeah. They're almost like creepy. They're not quite Shy Guy. It's like just the Shy Guy mask almost, and they're just like kind of got this evil looking smile to them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's smiling, but it's too happy, and I don't like it. You know what I mean? It's like an eerie smile.
No good.
Yeah, that's what the Holtz reminds me of.
Yeah, so another couple of enemies that you find in this area, the Violas, which are kind of like evil, creepy, scary-looking fireballs. They are an absolute nuisance in Ridley's area, particularly again because everything is so enclosed. Players would recognize these from Super Metroid. They're like the fireballs that just spin around and around and around on a platform, but it felt like they were always in your right up in your face in this area. Holtz's, as mentioned, they look like evil, creepy kind of bugs which fly up at you, and they're the purple versions which look really scary. Zebos fly over in here. Those are basically like the evil, like the little bugs or whatever, the ones that just pop out of the little tubes. You can shoot them for energy, which is good. We got multi-violas, which, as the name implies, are like a bunch of them together, and they're the big circular ones. And again, those are kind of imposing. Those show up, by the way, in Captain N, the Game Master. They almost got Kevin in one episode, and I was really sad that they didn't, because if anyone's ever watched that show, you know that Kevin sucks, and it's too bad that they didn't finish him off. And then, yeah, the Deskigas are up in there all over the place, and this is a particularly, I feel like, formidable foe over in Ridley's Lair. And the sprite, by the way, for these guys looks just demonic. Like, just absolutely demonic. Which, again, the Japanese artwork looks absolutely adorable. But man, this sprite I thought looked so awesome in this game.
Yeah, the juxtaposition between like the Japanese manual art and like how they actually look in the game is like,
it's good stuff.
I don't know. I think it's kind of charming for like that first game. Definitely would not work at all today, but like, you know, for that time, there's something funny about it that always gets me.
Yeah. And I think that's like one of the, you know, I would actually think that's a strength in general of like most NES games, is that you see a lot of like really great enemy variety in those games, and you're able to do that quite easily because of you're just making sprites. And I think it's pretty cool too that like a lot of these enemies have come back in subsequent games, and I think that's like a good showcase for like good design, that you know, you can see a lot of these enemies still in Metroid games all this time later. So lots of very cool enemies. Of course, we've been dancing around it here, but we should talk about the enemy of this area, the namesake of this area, and a version of this particular creature that has not really made a reappearance. And that, of course, is Ridley himself. And that's basically your entire mission in this area, is to get to Ridley, defeat Ridley, so that you can unlock his statue or whatever that's going on right before you get into Tori. There, you got to beat Ridley in order to do it. So the whole premise is basically just to hunt Ridley down, go get him, and defeat him. This is a version of Ridley that is very different, and dare I say, well, I was gonna say one of the only things I don't like about Ridley's Lair. It's not that I don't like it; it's just different. Like it's a different version of Ridley. Obviously, they're still kind of figuring out what they're gonna have Ridley be. You couldn't do the Super Metroid version, of course, because like we're still on the NES. And I think that the fight is actually like fun enough for what it is. But it's certainly not one of the better Ridley fights. I think you and I did a ranking, and we either put this last or like second last, only other M. So
no, this was one of the earlier episodes. This was way before I came on.
Has it been that long? Wow. Maybe it's, I guess it has been.
I want to say like 13, 14.
God, we were talking about time earlier, man. Holy cow. I actually think, now that I think about it, I think Dak and I couldn't agree on what was the best Ridley fight. I think we never actually got, I think we never actually settled that score. I think there's still a tie out there between Meta Ridley and Super Metroid Ridley somewhere. But yeah, like, first and foremost, let's break down the sprite before we break down the fight itself. I actually think that this is a pretty cool sprite. It's just weird that it's Ridley, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
There's
and
something
and again, there's something
right.
funny. There's something funny about, like, you know, the almost Barney, like, you know,
Yeah.
saturation of the purple. And honestly, I kind of love it that it's one of the color swaps in a Smash Ultimate for Ridley that you can actually use the OG NES colors. I think that's a really cool Easter egg. But yeah, obviously, I appreciate it for what it is. It's obviously not my Ridley, though.
Yeah. You know, like, if you look at the sprite, you can see the wings, but they're like right on his shoulders, and it's like, man, if you'd let those bad boys just fly out a little bit, this sprite would look like way better. No, and again, not that it looks bad, but it kind of does look like Barney a little bit. It's impossible not to notice that, or like, I don't know, like Ridley's head is very rounded instead of kind of the pointy dragon that we kind of know and love. And I guess, to be fair, like when you see Ridley in like Super Metroid, it looks more like a pterodactyl than like like when I think of dragon, I generally think of like, I don't know, not Ridley is my points. Like, I guess you could make the argument this does kind of look like a dragon, but it's certainly not the Ridley that most of us know and love. But let's not hold that against him. The fight itself, though, it's not exactly a cakewalk, but it's certainly not exactly as challenging as pretty much every other boss fight in the game. Granted, there's only 2 other boss fights in the game, but like, even like, I think you get to, like, getting to Ridley is the test. Like, not Ridley itself. Like, I think that if you can get to Ridley, you are skilled enough to beat Ridley for sure.
Yeah, and then we were talking about this earlier, where it's like Ridley, weirdly enough, is not the highlight of his own area. It's everything else. It's the onslaught of enemies, and just it kind of turns Metroid into a bullet hell. That's basically what this area is. And Ridley, he kind of seems like that at first, because there's these onslaught of fireballs. But once you get past the fireballs, you realize that, he can't change his arc trajectory, and then you just kind of spam your beam into him, and then, well, that's the whole fight, really.
I mean, pretty much, like if you've got the ice beam, you can easily just freeze like 3 of his fireballs. They take forever to come back, and like you can just pelt this guy while everything's frozen, and even easier. And I've seen a couple of people do this, and I wouldn't even recommend, like, when I was writing the guide, I don't even know if I think I did put this in the guide, but I was like, you do not need to do this because this fight is not that hard. But like, if you get the wave beam, you could just stand on the side and just shoot, and like, you might get hit like a couple times, but like, you're gonna have such an easy time. I've seen people get in the lava and shoot upwards with the wave beam, which also works. But again, it's like you're taking lava damage, and like you really don't need to do that, because like he's a pretty easy boss. So yeah, not like, it is what it is. Like, it was a prototype version of Ridley, and they were obviously figuring out how to make the Ridley boss fight, but yeah, it is a little bit too bad that like this version of Ridley is like a little bit, he's like, I think you put it best. He's not the highlight of his own area.
Yeah, and it's funny because, much like Zero Mission, this game does want you to fight Kraid first. You can fight Ridley first if you want to. It's very open-ended that way. But the game kind of tries to funnel you towards taking on Kraid first. And I think we can both agree that NES Kraid is definitely substantially more, maybe not a difficult fight, but compared to Ridley, a substantially bigger challenge than the Ridley fight.
Yeah,
Ridley's area is also substantially more challenging than Kraid's area, I would also say.
Which is why it's like kind of surprising when you get to Kraid how tough Kraid is. I would agree with that. I think that he's a much harder boss actually than Ridley, but the area is undoubtedly easier to get to Kraid, and the game does want you to do Kraid first for sure. It definitely kind of funnels you that way. I would never recommend that anybody do that, particularly because when you get to Kraid, you can have like full missiles. Pretty close to full missiles anyways. You could definitely have full energy tanks. It's worth noting though, I do think that the room that you fight Ridley in is like really, it looks cool. Like, it's got the spikes hanging from the ceiling. It's got that Super Metroid, like, kind of dark, blood color scheme going on. It looks really cool. That's one thing that they did get right in this area is the setting. The setting itself is incredible. We were talking about rooms that stick out to us earlier. I wanted to save this room until we got to the Ridley fight, but this room I think is like really cool, and even more so than like the Kraid room, which also looks pretty sweet to be honest. But I think that the setting, nothing else, sort of makes up for the fight itself.
I wouldn't go that far, but it is a very cool room. I kind of like that it's like it almost feels like Final Destination almost. Like it's not precisely flat like Ridley has a bit of a platform he's standing on, but you have this platform and then below you just have, this pool of death sitting below you. I kind of like the setup of that.
Well, let's move on, and I guess we'll kind of combine two things here and talk about items and expansions. Because there are no items in this area, and there's very limited expansions. By my count, there's, I don't know, maybe 1, 2 missile expansions, 2 energy tanks, and that's pretty much it. No items by the time that you get... I mean, by the time you get to Ridley's lair, if you've kind of been doing everything the right way or collecting everything properly, there's really no more items for you to get. It's just a matter of now going and defeating the boss. Which is like a little bit too bad, because I do think that it would be cool if you did get something in the area and like some kind of reward for beating Ridley. You do get 75 missiles, which in and of itself is like one heck of a missile expansion. But it would have been cool to get like something else, maybe like a plasma beam or something like that. And we weren't doing that by this point in the Metroid series, but it does make it... I guess it does make it, more of like a literal gauntlet, because you have a mission to do, you go in, you do it, and you leave. Like I said, unless you're going for that 100%, in which you have a whole other gauntlet to do, because the area underneath Ridley is also like this, like, just gauntlet run of lava, platforming, enemies, and it's really just for one missile expansion that you probably don't even need. I kind of respect it, actually, for that. I kind of respect it, but that's pretty much all that she wrote in terms of, like, extra things, expansions and whatever that you can get in this area. That's one thing that I think the area is definitely lacking in.
Yeah, for sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't even think Kraid's lair, at least in NEStroid, has any new items. Am I correct in that?
You're correct, yeah. Pretty much every single item in the game is in Brinstar and Norfair, and you can get everything that you need. Yeah, you could get everything that you need before you go into either Kraid or Ridley.
Gotcha. Okay. I was gonna say, because like I remember in Zero Mission, at least in both of those areas, are the unknown items, which technically, it still feels true to the NES games where you don't get anything, but you do get a payoff for those later, at least.
Yeah. I think we talked about this on the Zero Mission show.
Yeah.
I didn't love the unknown item idea. Like, I think it's better than nothing, but it just kind of was just like, give it to me now.
I think that's definitely fair, and I know we're going a little off topic here, but because especially if you're someone who you have played Super Metroid, obviously by the time you played Zero Mission, it's like, oh, unknown items, what could this be? And then you get them, and it's like, oh, it's these items I've already had before. Yeah. Whereas when I played Zero Mission, I had zero context, pun not intended, of where these items could come from. So I'm like, oh my god, I have an infinite jump now. I have a murder beam and nothing can stop me. Oh my gosh, I got a new suit. That's in this game? What? And so like having that without that context was like super cool for me back then. But yeah. I can totally understand if you already know the context, how that's a pretty underwhelming payoff.
Even like I thought that those items would have been cool, but it's just like I want them now. I don't want to wait. I want them right now. But it certainly was better than nothing, and nothing is kind of what you get in NEStroid. And I mean, granted, like 75 missiles is certainly nothing to scoff at, because you need missiles in this game. Like, you desperately need missiles, especially for Torian. Like, Torian is... You need missiles in order to do that. Like, you just do. You can't do it without them. So I do like that the game is, aware of that, I guess. And obviously, as they should be. But like, you get 75 for beating Kraid and Ridley. So no matter what, you're going to be loaded up on missiles. So function wise, it's a good reward, a good payoff, I guess. But it is a little bit. It's not the sexiest when you just get that instead of something else, which is too bad, I think. But it is what it is. Again, it's more useful than anything else, which I guess you could probably say about a lot of NES games. Is like it goes for function over flash, would be how I might put it.
I will say NEStroid is probably going to be the one game where your missile expansion critique is void.
Yeah, that for sure, because like, you need missile expansions. So like that's one that you should go out of your way to get every single last one, because you can easily have like what is it, like 225? Is that the amount of missiles that you get in this game? Whatever it is, you can easily use all 225 by the time that you get to Mother Brain and still not be done. It's a lot. Yeah, but it would have been cool to see, or at least like to have like because like later in the game you can find like the ice beam, you can find the wave beam, and you can switch between the two. It would have been nice to have at least that in both Kraid and Ridley, but c'est la vie, not no go. What do you get? Now that I'm thinking about it, what do you get for beating Ridley in Zero Mission? I can't remember.
You get the gravity suit.
The gravity suit.
Zero Mission.
And is it unknown item, or is it just you get it right away?
Yeah, it's an unknown item. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go and let's talk about actually one of my low-key favorite tracks in this series. I'm not gonna say it's like one of my top tier favorites, but like we'll talk about the music of this area. And I love the Ridley's Lair music. I think it's like super, super creepy and super, I don't know, just like ominous. And in particular, and you'll appreciate this, I remember listening to the Metroid Metal version of Ridley's area, and at the time, I can't remember if I'd played NEStroid or not. And so when I clicked on the link, and God, this could have been back in like the Napster days, or like the even like the LimeWire days, but like, so I clicked on the link and I was expecting like the Super Metroid version.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like like, damn, that sounds awesome. It just sounds so cool. And I was like, what is this? And I was like, wait a second, this actually goes pretty hard. And then I was like, this absolutely rocks. And then I obviously pulled up the actual version that plays in the game. And it's, I don't know what it is. It's just like there's probably a musical term for this that I don't know, but it's like the rising and falling of the do. There's something like unsettling about it almost. That I just think like really, really works. And strangely enough, again, kind of I had this critique with Kraid's Lair. I don't think that Zero Mission like captured it in the best way. Like I think the NES version actually like sounds cooler for some reason, and I promise I'm not just trying to be a boomer here because it's like sprite or like 8-bit music, but it's I don't know, there's something about it that just sounds very creepy and very like threatening to me, and maybe it's because I know the area that it's associated with, but I really love this track.
Yeah, so there actually is some musical terms. You might have noticed I did a quick Google search to make sure that I didn't misremember them. But yeah, so yeah, when you're in a piece of a song and it goes up, that is a crescendo, and when you go down again, that is a diminuendo. I'm probably mispronouncing that one. They're both very, very much Italian words. But yeah, and so I absolutely love that in this piece too. You pretty much took the words right out of my mouth. I really love Hip Tanaka's original pitch for this game, and I've talked about this on God knows how many episodes of the podcast now. That philosophy of making the music feel like a living, breathing creature, and I think that is such an important piece of the DNA that makes not just Metroid music, but Metroid in general feels so unique from other sci-fi properties. And I feel like Ridley's Lair is one of those tracks where, that philosophy is really shining through. And, I also love the counter medley because, you have that, you have that kind of rising wave on the top, but then in the bass, you have the do, 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 do. And I love that counterplay between the two. It's so awesome.
It kind of gives me like evil Science Lair vibes, almost like the do 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 do, and maybe it's because it's on like again like the 8-bit processor, but like that it sounds like very bassy again to me for whatever reason, and I think it just sounds really spectacular and just very charming. I think it's my favorite piece of music actually in NEStroid. And there's some really good pieces of music in NEStroid. Maybe the title theme I would say is better, but like this would be right up there with it. I just think it more than almost any other area, except for maybe Kraid. I think the music really sells like the action, the mood, the intensity, everything like that. So I'm actually a little bit surprised that this really hasn't come back like at all. Like Zero Mission aside, I don't know. I think that this would be like a really, really great throwback track. Like if you were to do like a Ridley area, or like let's just say, let's pretend that Metroid 6 comes out and Ridley, or a version of Ridley anyways, is coming back. Like but maybe you don't want to bring back like the same tried and true Norfair theme that we've heard in Metroid Prime and Samus Returns and blah blah blah. I think you could do a lot worse, man, than bringing this track back and updating it and just kind of giving it that sinister kind of vibe to it. I think that this track is like really slept on, and it's too bad that it's just kind of like really like a footnote in Ridley history, because you know, obviously it's not the first track that you think of when you think of Ridley, and which is too bad, because I think that it's really, really awesome.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love this piece of music. I would love to see it come back. I always kind of envisioned this like, obviously we don't know what's going to happen in Prime 4. I have a feeling that Ridley is going to make an appearance in Prime 4. I feel a warm feeling in my gut about that one. And I always thought it would be cool. Like obviously the main theme is going to be, it's probably going to be, you know, the tried and true Ridley theme, but like, you know, what if like, you know, in Super Metroid, you know, for, you know, Kraid's theme, you have the da 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 that plays like in the room before. Mm-hmm. What if you had something similar with Ridley, but you did that NES theme leading up to that? I think that would be like a cool, like little prelude theme to kind of pair with that.
You know, I think that there might be even room for both. That we're, you know, getting a little bit off topic, but like, man, what if you could like make a medley of like the classic Ridley theme that we know, work in some elements of this theme, maybe, I don't know, maybe like the main Metroid Prime 4 theme is interwoven in there. Like I think that there could be opportunity to bring this theme back, because I think it's slept on, and I think it's like a really, really solid track, and it's too bad that we've never really seen it come back since. I don't even think that it's come back for Smash or anything like that, right? Like I know they brought the original Norfair music back, but yeah, nothing for this track, which is a crime, because this is a really, really cool piece of business.
Yeah, and again, I like the Zero Mission too, but like it is very much its own unique beast. It's definitely a lot more of a mysterious track, you know. Yeah. You know, it almost sound, you know, it almost makes the place feel abandoned. Whereas the NES one, it is alive and everything is trying to kill you.
Yeah, you know what? Just to backtrack a little bit here, I was reading some notes here. I guess Nintendo Power is on our side. They actually said that it was called Hideout 2, but that you should visit Ridley's Lair first because it's easier than Kraid's Lair. So there you go. Shout out to Nintendo Power. Very based advice from those folks back in the day.
I miss Nintendo Power, man.
Yeah, Nintendo Power was sweet. There was like a fan-made magazine or something like that. It was supposed to be like the spiritual sequel to Nintendo Power. We dealt with them a little bit at Zelda Dungeon, and now I can't remember what they're called. I don't know if they're still doing their thing or not, but it was
Nintendo
cool
Force?
Maybe? I don't remember. I don't remember, to be honest with you. That sounds like close enough, though. It sounds like that could be right. Yeah, you know, it's... I don't think that anyone is going to say that it's the greatest area in the Metroid series. You know, it's small, but I think like this area just really kind of packs a punch that I don't know if a lot of people truly appreciate. Like, I think that the challenge of going through that gauntlet run is really fun in a way, with that music playing and like getting to this really weird, different alternate version of Ridley, and like there's just these funny troll moments in here, like the leap of faith and the lava room and whatnot. I think that this area is just like, it's got a lot of good stuff going for it, and I think it's kind of slept on. Number one, because, you know, and through no fault of anybody's here, but like I think most people, if they can avoid it, will probably do so, not necessarily play this game, and they'll go right to Zero Mission. And then number two, I think that it's kind of generally agreed upon that the worst version of Ridley is probably this version of Ridley. I think if you asked a Metroid fan, they'd probably tell you that. And so I just think that like it's slept on because of that. And if you can get past the Barney looking version of Ridley, there's a really, really fun area to be had here. And it's a really good challenge and really cool enemies and cool music. I like this area a lot. I kind of I even had to kind of campaign for it to be on the show today, because I think both you and Dak were like, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever. We can do that area if you want, but I don't know. I have a soft spot for this area. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. It's like I said earlier, I want to give NEStroid another chance someday. I want to see what I want to really like, just kind of put all my, my preconceptions, or I don't even want to say preconceptions because I've already played the game, but like I want to just like wipe everything I know about the game and like just kind of start as fresh as I humanly can. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because yeah, I was watching this this YouTube stuff, and like obviously yeah, it's NEStroid, but I'm like, man, this area is kind of cool actually. I am starting to see the light, which is ironic because this is not a very light area at all.
Yeah, and you know what I would say? There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with using passwords and cheats and save states and the Switch Rewind. Nothing wrong with that. That makes this game actively better, and it makes it easier to play and easier to enjoy. So, like, if you're... I mean, listen, if you want to give this a shot and you have the Switch, which I imagine that most people listening probably do, and I'd imagine most people listening probably have NSO, why not use that stuff, right? Like, why the heck not? It's going to make your experience more enjoyable, more fun. I think more accessibility is always great. If you don't want to use it, that's fine. You certainly don't have to, but... I just think it's, I think it's like, we always talk about Norfair, we always talk about Brinstar, we talk about Torian, and rightfully so, those are awesome areas. I never see Ridley's area get any love, and I think it should. I think it should get talked about a little bit more than it does, and I'm glad that today, at least, on Mapping Metroid, it had its time in the sun, because I don't think we'll probably ever talk about this area again. So I'm glad that we got to do it here today.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was already covered on a Great Metroid Area rankings. So
it was, and ranked kind of highly actually as well, which I might have shown my bias there. But hey, that's what can I say? Actually, speaking of great, let me try that again in English. Speaking of Great Metroid Area ranking, easy for me to say. We've got a new episode coming out later this week, so if you are dying for some more Metroid content, go and check that out. It's we're having a good time. We're ranking every single area in the Metroid series, and for what it's worth right now, we've covered 40 areas, and Ridley's Lair is ranked number 16, the highest NEStroid area, actually. So there you go. Even higher than Torian, which I was actually prepared to rank Torian a little bit higher, but then we decided not to. But yeah, we got that going on. It's over on patreon.com/SPNet. We got a Total Water theme going for this month. We got Berenia, we got Sector 4, we've got the Hydro Station from AM2R, so lots and lots of cool stuff over there. Come check us out over on Patreon, and yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. Doom, any final thoughts on Ridley's Lair, NEStroid at large before we get on out of here?
When I do eventually play this game, I will be playing Infidelity's Metroid SNES port, which includes a ton. It's still very much, Metroid, but it includes just some very small quality of life enhancements, as well as some completely optional features if you do still want that kind of purest Metroid experience, but just a little bit updated. It combines the ice and wave beam, for example. You can choose between the NES or the Famicom soundtrack, which I think is super dope. I absolutely love that. It includes a map, probably one of the biggest changes. If you want it, you don't have to use it if you don't want it. You can also toggle weapons on and off, just like in Super Metroid. So if you want to go for like a Baron run, you can just turn all your stuff off and just play the game that way. Yeah, it's just and then also the game slows down quite a bit, not with the SNES port. It stays completely locked, which actually does in a way make it more challenging, but I personally just prefer to have the frame rate just consistent throughout. I think it just makes it easier to get a grasp of your movement and whatnot. But yeah, if you're someone who's into that stuff, I definitely recommend checking out. He's also done a ton of other NES to SNES conversions as well, and yeah, super talented guy.
Wow, that owns. What is it called? Is it a ROM-Hack?
No, so it's a port of the NES Metroid onto an SNES ROM, and I think you might even be able to play it. I think you might even be able to play it on an actual SNES if you dump it to a cart. But yeah, most people just emulate it, obviously.
You know what? Speaking of ROM hacks, actually, I know we're trying to get out of here, but there's a really, really awesome ROM hack for NEStroid. It's called Junkoid, and I actually covered it on ROM hack reviews. I think we might have even released it, actually. And I actually just saw that there's a Super Junkoid that just came out, so I might have to check that out. Bring back ROM hack reviews for a little dip in the water here. But that'll be for another day. For now, we are going to get out of here. Hey, if you want to hear my thoughts and Sam's thoughts on Furiosa, check out the Spiteri reviews. That episode's going to be dropping in the next few days, if it's not out already by the time that you are listening to this show. And if you want to check out OmegaMetroid.com, if you're interested in playing NEStroid, we've got maps, we've got strategies, we've got everything that you could possibly need for this game. Where the missiles are, where the energy tanks are, the best routes to take, literal step-by-step instructions for where to go. Everything is there, so go and check that out. And there's pretty much that for every single other game in the series, including, should we reveal something on this show? You want to say?
I'll be honest. I have no idea what you're going with this. So just feel free to go.
I think you do. We have a brand. We've teased it before, but we have a walkthrough that it's finally ready. It's good to go here. We are almost there. Metroid Prime is going to be debuting here on OmegaMetroid.com. The full walkthrough, written by our very own Doom Crossing, that's going to be up before the end of the month. So, hey, go give it another spin and check out some of Doom's commentary there. He's got some good tips for you. Lots and lots and lots of cool stuff there. And then, yeah, make sure that you give us a follow wherever you are over on social, at Omega Metroid Pod, at Spiteri316, at Doom Crossing, and check us out wherever you get your podcast. Like, subscribe, recommend, rate, review, all of that good stuff. If you got a Metroid fan in your life, tell them about the Omega Metroid podcast. We're doing it weekly. We're the only people doing this weekly, so throw some love our way, because we appreciate everybody that listens and everybody that shares. That being said, we are going to get out of here, so we want to wish everyone an awesome rest of your week. If you're in the States, I hope that you have a great long weekend. And if you're not in the States, well, a good enough Monday anyways. So there it is. Until next week, everybody. Take care.